Her pregnancy announcement triggered an absolute bombshell, exposing a secret family we never knew existed. His perfectly constructed double life just crumbled to dust, leaving behind a wake of betrayal and shattered trust. This is the story of how one life-changing moment ripped open a hidden world, and the devastating fallout that followed. Sarah had spent the entire morning preparing for this moment. The living room was perfect, soft lighting, a bottle of sparkling cider chilling in an ice bucket, her mother's famous lasagna warming in the oven. She'd even scattered rose petals across the coffee table where the ultrasound photo sat hidden inside a small gift box wrapped in silver paper. This was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. After 3 years of marriage and months of trying, she was finally pregnant. Mark would be home any minute, and she couldn't wait to see his face light up with the same joy that had been bubbling inside her chest since the doctor's appointment that morning. When Mark walked through the door at 6:15, Sarah noticed his smile seemed just a fraction too tight, his hug a beat too quick. But she dismissed it. He'd mentioned a stressful week at work. She guided him to the couch, her hands trembling with excitement as she placed the gift box in his lap. "Open it," she whispered, her eyes glistening. Mark's fingers fumbled with the ribbon. When he lifted the lid and saw the grainy black and white image, that tiny bean-shaped promise of their future, Sarah watched his face carefully. She expected tears of joy, laughter, maybe even a shout of celebration. Instead, his smile froze. His eyes widened, not with happiness, but with something that looked disturbingly like terror. For just a split second, the mask slipped, and Sarah saw raw panic flash across his features before he caught himself and pulled her into what felt like a mechanical embrace. That's wonderful, honey," he managed, his voice hollow, but his phone was already buzzing in his pocket. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. What Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that in that exact moment, Mark's entire world was imploding. His mind raced through impossible calculations. Jessica was 7 months pregnant. Jessica, his other wife. The woman he'd married 4 years ago in Portland, before he'd relocated for work and built a second life here in Chicago. The woman who believed he traveled constantly for his job, just as Sarah believed he had family obligations that took him away every other week. For 2 years, he'd maintained this impossible balance, living in 2 separate realities, keeping 2 families in carefully compartmentalized boxes that were never supposed to touch. But now, as he held Sarah and felt her heart racing against his chest, those boxes were splintering apart. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mark excused himself to the bathroom, his hands shaking as he checked the screen. 7 missed calls from Jessica. 12 text messages. The last one made his blood run cold. "Mark, something's wrong. I'm bleeding. I'm scared. Where are you? Why aren't you answering?" Another text, this one from Jessica's sister Lauren. "If you don't call back in 5 minutes, I'm calling hospitals and then the police." Mark stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His face had gone pale, sweat beading on his forehead. He was trapped. If he left now, Sarah would know something was catastrophically wrong. If he stayed, Jessica might actually call the police, and then everything would unravel. He splashed cold water on his face and made a choice. He had to go. He'd figure out the explanation later. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," he said, emerging from the bathroom with his keys already in hand. "There's an emergency at work, a server crash. I have to go fix it right now." Sarah's face fell. "Now, tonight." "Mark, we were going to celebrate." But he was already moving toward the door, kissing her forehead with lips that felt cold. "I'll be back as soon as I can. We'll celebrate properly, I promise." And then he was gone, leaving Sarah standing alone in their perfectly prepared living room, rose petals scattered at her feet, confusion replacing joy. Over the following days, Sarah's confusion hardened into suspicion. Mark's behavior had always been slightly compartmentalized. The way he kept his phone face down, his vague explanations about work trips, the credit card statements he insisted on handling himself. She dismissed these things as quirks, but now they formed a pattern she could no longer ignore. That weekend, while Mark was supposedly at a conference, Sarah found herself doing something she'd never done before. She went through his home office. In the back of a locked drawer she'd managed to open with a hairpin, she found a second phone. An entire secret device she'd never seen before. Her hands trembled as she powered it on. No passcode, overconfidence, or carelessness, she'd never know which. The screen lit up with a photo that stopped her heart. Mark smiling broadly, his arm around a pregnant woman with kind eyes and dark hair. Behind them, a little girl, maybe 5 years old, sat on Mark's shoulders. They looked like a family. They looked happy. They looked real. Sarah's legs gave out and she sank to the floor, scrolling through messages that rewrote her entire marriage. "Love you, can't wait for you to come home." Emma asked about Daddy again. "Only 4 weeks until we meet our son." Jessica, her name was Jessica, and she was due in 3 weeks. When Mark returned that evening, Sarah was waiting in the darkened living room, the second phone on the coffee table between them like evidence at a crime scene. "Who is Jessica?" The question hung in the air like smoke. She watched him freeze in the doorway, watched the color drain from his face, watched him open his mouth and close it again, searching for words that didn't exist. "Sarah, I can explain," but there was no explanation that could make this right, no words that could rebuild what he demolished. "I have another family." The confession came out in a broken whisper. "I have a wife in Portland, a daughter, a son on the way." Each word was a detonation, blowing apart every memory, every promise, every moment they'd shared. Sarah's world tilted and crashed. The man she'd loved, the father of her unborn child, was a stranger, a fraud, a ghost who'd been haunting 2 lives simultaneously, and now both were collapsing. The aftermath was a hurricane of devastation. Lawyers, tearful phone calls, Jessica's shocked voice on speakerphone as Sarah introduced herself as the other wife. The look on Emma's face when she learned Daddy wouldn't be coming home. The financial wreckage of a man who'd been supporting 2 households, now facing the legal consequences of bigamy. Friends chose sides, families fractured. 2 women, strangers bound by betrayal, both carrying children who would grow up knowing their father as the man who chose deception over truth. Sarah moved forward, one painful day at a time, building a life from the rubble. But she never forgot that moment. The ultrasound photo, Mark's frozen smile, the instant when joy transformed into the beginning of truth. Some secrets, once exposed, can never be hidden again. And some announcements meant to celebrate new life instead reveal the death of everything you thought you knew. One photograph, one moment, one lie too many to sustain. And 2 families left to pick up the pieces of a man who tried to live in 2 worlds at once, until those worlds finally, inevitably, collided.